Inside Story Uganda, real source of political updates.
On one hand, assuming or pretending we are coming together over an issue and trying to find a solution, while at the same time each country is pulling in its own direction, different from the others.
The conflict has triggered mass displacement, with hundreds of thousands fleeing their homes in search of safety.
For the last 2 days, on Monday and today this morning, I spoke with the President of South Africa, who sought me out to speak with me on this matter because of their involvement in Eastern Congo. And he's also there pretending to be playing a peacemaker role. And he has a force that has been fighting alongside FDLR and has been fighting the M23 on the instructions of Tshisekedi, because these are people who are not supposed to be in Congo, that these are from Rwanda, or the M23 are not Rwandans, please.
Independent from Kanyandahi village, old man of the clan.
Kanyandahi city.
Eh?
Why are you downgrading a whole city into a village?
Ah, okay. I thought it was Kanyandahi kingdom. Yeah. You said you were deputy king at some stage.
of
Kanyandahi kingdom.
Yes.
The old man of the clan, Andrew Mwenda. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and good evening, viewers.
From the Alliance for National Transformation, former diplomat, retired diplomat, rather, I think that's the correct way. Retired diplomat, Ambassador Edith Sempala. Very nice to have you.
Good evening, Charles. Good evening, viewers.
From Kira Municipality, from PFF, Shadow Minister for Finance and Frontliner, Ibrahim Semujunganda. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Charles.
And we'll be joined shortly by one or two other guests. I will introduce them as soon as they get in here. I want to start with you, Andrew Mwenda. You've been following closely the situation in Goma. There was a summit of the leaders.
Mwenda, just following.
Mwenda, he has been named by a UN Security.
Yeah, so you need to introduce him.
By the UN Security Committee. The UN,
this is not
the UN believes Mwenda speaks for the M23. Where are your forces? What are they doing now? What's going on in Goma City?
I wish I was the one in control of the forces. But I just want to, off the jokes, what is your question, sir?
No, my question is...
You, the patron of M23, why are you capturing?
Honorable Semujungana, I'm asking the questions.
Yes.
You're answering.
Thank you very much.
I am asking. Did not understand. This is M23 patron.
Andrew, let me put a direct question. The leaders of the East African community held a summit, an extraordinary summit. Did they reach any resolution?
Well, they do not actually reach a resolution because, first of all, the East African community long ago arrived at a resolution. Perhaps to enlighten our listeners, there are a group of Congolese who are of Kinyarwanda culture, and many of them are Tutsis. For so many years, for many decades, the local population in Congo do not agree that these people are indigenous to Congo. Remember that when the Berlin Conference happened in 1884 to partition Africa, Europeans sat on a map in Berlin and saw a river there, a lake, a valley, a mountain, and used it as a demarcation line to create borders of our current states. So the British, the Belgians, and the Germans divided, are the ones that created the borders we have today. What you see as the country called Rwanda today is much smaller than the pre-colonial kingdom of Congo.
The pre-colonial kingdom of Rwanda?
Rather, the pre-colonial kingdom of Rwanda. So you see, Kisoro was part of Rwanda kingdom. If you read Matthew Chikere's book, he does mention that Kisoro was the head office or the headquarter of the queen mother of the king of Rwanda. And I think his mother comes from there, Kisoro. So part of Eastern DRC, the areas of Masisi, Mulenge Hills and all this were part of Rwanda Kingdom, are occupied by people of Kinyarwanda culture, Kinyarwanda language. Now, after independence, the Congolese, like many Ugandans, tended to associate the Banyarwanda of Congo with Rwanda, saying they should go back to Rwanda. But these people cannot go back to Rwanda because they have never been there. The land which they occupy is they're indigenous to that land.
Before you get the history, I appreciate the history. Yes, I appreciate the history. Let's first deal with the current situation in Goma and the broader Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Actually, all the way up to Kinshasa now, because there was the banning of the Ugandan embassy there. Two is the rebels in Goma, who now control Goma, are saying they will march on to Kinshasa. So I want to go back to the summit, or the extraordinary summit of the East African.
Yes, but that is what the summit was saying. You played President Kagame there, and that's what I'm explaining. He's saying M23 are not Rwandese, they are Congolese. So the government of Congo and some communities in Congo claim that those the people of Kinyarwanda culture in Congo don't belong to Congo. They should go back to Rwanda. And the war you are seeing in Goma today is a struggle by the M23, especially the Tutsi Congolese in Rwanda, to say, we are demanding the recognition of our citizenship rights as an indigenous community inside DRC. The government of Congo has been allied with the militias called Wazalendo, who grab these people's land, steal their cows, rape their women, kill their children. And therefore, this movement emerged to protect that specific community against a terror orchestrated by the government of Congo directly through its own army and indirectly through its associated and allied militias called Wazalendo. Of course, plus the FDLR, which is a genocidal rebel group fighting Rwanda, but is based in Congo. So that is the crux of the current struggle. So when the East African leaders met, I think in 2022, that is the same year that Congo joined the East African community, they agreed that M23 has legitimate grievances and legitimate demands. Tshisekedi, with fellow East African leaders, signed an agreement. We recognize M23 to be a legitimate organization with legitimate grievances and legitimate demands. And how do we resolve this problem? We shall have a political solution. For us to be able to drive to a political solution, we are going to deploy an East African force, military force, on the ground to ensure that the two belligerents, the government of Congo and the M23, do not fight. And that the presence of the East African force would create an atmosphere for the two sides to negotiate politically and arrive at a solution. The ink had not yet dried on that agreement when President Tshisekedi woke up one day and dismissed all the East African forces there. So the very force that was keeping the two apart was removed. Then he contacted the SADC and asked SADC to give him forces. So Tanzania, Malawi, South Africa contributed troops. And these troops did not come as peacekeepers. Remember, the East African force, they were not necessarily peacekeepers, but they were a force to stand between the two groups. But the SADC forces came as belligerents on the side of the Congolese state to fight M23. And they have had combat to the two sides. So that is what escalated the situation. I should also take you backwards now, because we started from the present. When Tshisekedi was elected, he invited M23. Remember, M23 were rebels against Joseph Kabila, his predecessor. So when he was in opposition, fighting to become president, M23 and him were in communication and in alliance. One of the leaders of M23, Kanyuka, is actually a Luba from the same village as Tshisekedi. So Kanyuka led the M23 delegation to Kinshasa, and they spent there 14 months negotiating a peace agreement. The peace agreement was signed, and it had two things. One, recognition of the people of Kinyarwanda culture as citizens of DRC, and therefore their protection, and the integration of M23 soldiers into the Congolese army. Now remember this, Charles. M23 soldiers were previously in the Congolese army under Kabila. They broke up and rebelled. But they were not removed from the army roll. Their ranks remained, and many of them were being promoted. They were getting their salaries. But please, the background is important, because you want to discuss.
That's my fear, because the background is very long. M23
Yeah,
imagine is.
Charles, when you have one of the M23 here, those of us here who are here and the audience must hear the benefit from M23.
Yes, because I would want then Andrew to go back, because M23 leaders lived in Kampala for a long time. A section of them had been put in Behanga barracks. A section of them were in Kigali, because that March 23rd, where they get their name from, is a long drawn out conflict.
Because if you could allow me to give you a background, then you would have your panel discuss this issue in a proper context, and that's what President Kagame, you see in that video, is trying to explain. That you can come and begin doing television sound bites and then do injustice to the listener to understand the context. So M23 negotiated an agreement. This agreement, one of the components was that the M23 soldiers will be integrated into the Congolese army. The M23 assembled at particular point B, surrendered all their weapons to the government of Congo. After surrendering their weapons, the government of Congo was supposed to provide transport to move them to a place called Ba Congo. If you look at the map, Ba Congo is 1,800 kilometers from Goma, on the border with Angola.
And they refused.
No. Oh no. A series of months passed without any transport being brought to take them away. So one day the Congolese army attacked these disarmed M23 and killed many of them. Those who escaped relaunched this struggle. So the first thing you need to remember is the Congolese government violated its own peace agreement signed with M23. Then the second,
the Congolese
it violated
government under Tshisekedi or under
Tshisekedi. I
Yes.
told you that when Tshisekedi came in, he called the M23 to Kinshasa. They spent there 14 months and they negotiated a peace agreement. That peace agreement had one component where the M23 would be integrated into the Congolese army. They actually assembled at a particular place inside DRC, surrendered all their weapons, and under the terms of the agreement, they were supposed to be transported to Ba Congo, where they would be far away from their ethnic base. For some reason that I cannot up to now understand until somebody talks to Kinshasa and to Tshisekedi, the FADAC, the Congolese army, FADAC, attacked M23, killed many of them. That's how this rebellion resumed. Now remember that M23 had an agreement with Kabila before then, under similar circumstances where they had been integrated into the Congolese army. That's why I'm saying that many of these M23 people you see, they are actually registered officers with the numbers in the Congolese army. They receive salaries, which they don't come to them, of course, the officers in Kinshasa eat them. They have even been receiving promotions because the Congolese army has never removed them from the role. It benefits from them being Yugo soldiers there. So, when the East African leaders are meeting, this is the subject they are facing. One, Kabila had an agreement with these people, he violated them. Tshisekedi had an agreement with these people, he violated them. You can say, okay, that was domestic. But Tshisekedi also had an agreement with the African leaders to ensure that their peace talks and this peace agreement is implemented. He withdrew from it unilaterally without consulting his peers. Even Kabila had that agreement through what they call the International Conference on the Great Lakes Region, ICGRC. I remember between 2012 and 2015, President Museveni was the chair. Museveni hosted 8 conferences of ICGRC on the issue of M23. An agreement was signed that they should be integrated into the Congolese army. Kabila was, and all East African, all Great Lakes Region countries said each one of them will contribute $20 million to pay for the resettlement of fighters and civilians. Kabila was the first person to pay the money. After Kabila had put $20 million before other countries could put it there, the UN came and said, let us be the ones to fund this process. When the UN intervened, Kabila came and withdrew his money. The thing fell apart. I attended a meeting in Munyonyo there, where President Museveni told Kabila, this was a heads of state meeting, and they allowed other people to attend. And President Museveni told Kabila, these M23 people have come there in Uganda here. They're in a refugee camp in Behanga. In our refugee camps, we don't have a fence around. So I don't have any means of controlling them. If you do not follow what we agreed to integrate them, they will become a future problem. They will come back. And this M23, when the last time they attacked the DRC, they came from Uganda. They were in our camps here, and that's what you are saying. So what is the problem that we are facing? We are facing a problem where the government of Congo in Kinshasa, whether under Kabila and under Tshisekedi, has been unable to live up to its own agreements, whether they are domestic or international, which it has signed with M23 domestically and with the International Conference on the Great Lakes Region, ICGRC, internationally, and with the East African community. Now, Tshisekedi, I think, got convinced that the solution to the problem of M23 would be a military one. I will hire mercenaries from Romania. I will bring the South African army, the Tanzanian army, and they will become my, and then I will ally myself with FDLR and these Wazalendo militias to fight M23. What we are seeing today is the failure of a military solution backed by some members of SADC and also backed by local militias to annihilate
Thank you.
the Tutsi Congolese.
Ambassador Edith Sempala, let me come to you. What does this conflict, this intractable conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo mean for Africa? Why has it failed resolution?
Yeah, I think that it reflects the failure of leadership. Personally, this business of the Berlin demarcation of Africa or the scramble for Africa doesn't even sell, because you have a country like Somalia, which is one tribe, one religion, but they found out that they have different clans, and they have been fighting based on that. So it is a failure of managing diversity, because obviously there is no way, if a country cannot manage its ethnicity, it will continuously have trouble. I mean, we have a country like Tanzania. It is bigger than Uganda. It is bigger than many countries with many diverse ethnicities. But they are stable. They are living in harmony, which I attribute to the leadership of President Nyerere.
There's an argument, Ambassador, that the DRC, vastly resourced, especially with mineral resources and other natural resources, has been a playing field for international shady business people. All countries in the world interested in the resources of the Democratic Republic of Congo and wanting to get them on the cheap cannot allow that country to stabilize. And they say that is the reason. And when you saw those videos of the mercenaries, of the alleged mercenaries, that is evidence that the international community, especially the Western, the developed Western world, is actively funding or perpetuating this conflict and doesn't want it resolved.
But Charles, it goes back again to leadership. Who invites them? If they don't wish Africa peace, why shouldn't Africans wish peace for themselves? Why do they allow them? Why should a country in Africa invite mercenaries, European mercenaries, to come and kill Africans?
They're saying there's no capacity.
No, it
Kinshasa
is,
doesn't have capacity to keep them out.
don't you think that even Tanzania would have been destabilized if Nyerere didn't stand his ground? So I believe that it's a challenge for the elite of Africa to keep on blaming others for our own failures. Yes, it's obvious that the others want to fish in troubled waters, but why do we create those troubled waters?
Kinshasa has directly blamed, and I want to put this to Fonopondo, Kinshasa has directly blamed Kigali and Kampala for fomenting the conflict in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo.
Well, the fact that somebody blames it doesn't mean you are guilty. But let's go back. I agree with the Ambassador. Mwenda's argument about colonialists dividing using a mathematical ruler to create boundaries doesn't fly with me, because there is no African country that doesn't have the same population across the borders. Yes. Look at Uganda itself. We have more Lur in Congo than in Uganda. We have more Chol in South Sudan than in Uganda. We have more Bagisu in Kenya than in Uganda. We have more Samias and so on. We have more Rwandese outside Uganda on the borders than the Rwandese in Uganda. Banyarwanda in Uganda, ethnic Banyarwanda in Uganda. How come we don't have similar conflicts? And why did this problem start around 1994? This particular problem between Rwanda and Congo. You remember when we had the problems in Rwanda, the genocide, and in Burundi, there were scholars actually, including Makere here, who suggested to President Museveni and Vice President Kagame then that the solution of Rwanda and Burundi, we should swap ethnicities, that we should give Bahutu Burundi, and we should give Tutsi to Burundi, and we give the Hutu to Rwanda. And they said that was their formula. Professors of social sciences here in Makere, that was their solution, their proposal. So it is a cocktail. I think part of the problem was the genocide in Rwanda. When the Congolese government headed by Mobutu, supported by France, adamant, first of all, they received the people who were fleeing from Rwanda, the army, the former army men, and their militia, the Interahamwe, and they refused to disarm them. You remember, with the support of the French created there an operation called Operation Tocqueville, creating a buffer zone between the advancing RPA and the people who are fleeing. And they refused to disarm them. I think up to date, many of those remnants still are armed. And I think because they were intent on coming back to Rwanda, the Rwandese government, today's government in Rwanda, had to create a posture that they must fight this war outside their territory. I think that fed into conflict that had been running underground of ethnic identity and exclusion of the Rwandese of Congo, who the Congolese government was saying was denying identity and excluding. And that's where the M23 now emerges. And the obstinacy, I think, of the Kabila government and the Tshisekedi's government today, I suspect, is still being funded by external interests. Some of the elements you are mentioning, the minerals, the economy, and so on and so forth. I think they are not willing to agree to a settlement that allows the ethnic Banyarwanda to be admitted, to be recognized as such, as Congolese citizens. I think that's at the bottom, underlying the conflict. And so the conflict will continue. Now that added, President Kagame said, I will not use his words, which he said if you have idiots, and those idiots are in leadership, you have a problem. For me, I would want to say, if you have people in leadership who are superficial, I see, and this is happening, by the way, to the French-speaking African countries. Their leaders seem to think that the white skin is superior. You remember this, the thing of assimilation, the ideology of assimilation, that if you speak French, you're a Frenchman. Added to the color, the brown color is, the white color is superior. And I think the leaders of many of these countries still think that. And therefore,
are you being fair to them when those in West Africa have been leading the resistance against?
Well, but they are leading superficially also. That's why you see they are not moving forward. I think they are playing to the gallery. Those new groups in West Africa, they are playing to the gallery, that nobody will discover them soon. So I think that has blind shielded the leadership in Congo to face the problem in reality. The same thing that Habyarimana tried to do. You remember Habyarimana said, these Kagame, that Rwanda was too small for the Tutsi who had fled as refugees into Tanzania, into Uganda. That was what Habyarimana said, that Rwanda was too small for these people to go back. Now they went back, and Rwanda is accommodating many more people than what Habyarimana was dealing with. Double the population.
Thank you.
So, this conflict we have today, until the leadership, primarily of Congo, accept to lead. I mean, you are just talking about mercenaries. In today's world, when Americans were chased from Afghanistan, for somebody to go and look for 200 mercenaries, or even if there were 1,000, to come and protect the territorial integrity of Congo, you must be a joker. And if you're in the leadership, I agree with President Kagame, if you're an idiot and you're in the leadership, there's a problem in that country.
Honorable Semujunganda, what does this mean for the East African community? You have your newest member, the Democratic Republic of Congo, accusing some of the oldest members, Kampala and Kigali, of fanning, and fighting alongside the M23 to destabilize it. With the exchange that you saw from President Kagame, mentioning President Etienne Tshisekedi.
And the gestures, I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to correct the impression you made that Uganda harbored M23 in the camps in Uganda. Actually, when they raided Goma, the argument was when they were defeated there, they went back to Uganda, Uganda disarmed them. And we took them to Bihanga. It was we called it a cantonment. And when the deal fell through, these people had to scatter. And the president had warned them. I was in a meeting with the president when he met Kabila in 2016, I think it was August, in Mwenda. And he warned him, he said, if you don't quicken the process of integrating the combatants who are willing to go back into the army and the ones who want to retire, and was giving him our own experience here. We said, these people, we shall not be able to contain them in Bihanga for a long time.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I did cover the peace talks between Kinshasa under Kabila and the M23 at Munyonyo, when the leaders of the M23 were staying in Bugolobi here. And I did a number of interviews with the president of M23, Bertrand Bisimwa, several times. But let's move to the East African community. What does this mean? Can this community hold together? Does it have the capacity to deal with this crisis, given what you saw, the exchanges between Kinshasa and especially President Etienne Tshisekedi and President Paul Kagame?
Is the East African community there?
You were playing in the East African community games.
That's where
you were. So in which games were you participating if it's not there?
That's where it stops. I have been in Tanzania. The ruling party does not believe in it. The opposition in Tanzania doesn't believe in it. That's why they belong to SADC and the East African community. I have listened to both Ofono-Opondo, who Ofono-Opondo represents the view of Uganda, which is also accused. Andrew Mwenda represents the view of M23, who is also accused. You see, 98, Uganda and Rwanda went to Congo with a solution. They ended up fighting there themselves. Rwanda killed nearly a whole battalion of Ugandan soldiers, nearly 700. I don't know, I don't have the knowledge whether that is part of the foundation why our relationship with Rwanda have failed to stabilize. because we are also pretending. You are choosing the others of being idiots. But Uganda and Rwanda are also pretending.
He said superficial.
Superficial. You know, he concluded by saying he agrees with Kagame. He was just laying a polite foundation, but he ended up saying the same things. And it is wrong to continue blaming colonialists. The African Union, from the Organization of African Unity, why didn't we redraw the borders? We begin surrendering territory that belongs to Kenya, we go and pick ours in Sudan and so on and so forth. The colonialists who created the...
President Mwalimu Julius Nyerere of Tanzania made that case in a clip that's been making rounds recently, discussing the crisis in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. And he was saying he made an argument before the OAU summit in 1964 to say, let us accept the borders as they were drawn.
Yeah, but you see, yes. Charles, these processes have been on forever. Gaddafi said we need to create a United States of Africa with one army, with one government. Museveni, together with Mbeki, undermined it. And Museveni spoke proudly about it. He said we need to start with smaller blocks. You remember the problem he had with Gaddafi towards the end. One time, Museveni sending Mama Mbabazi and Kutesa to go and pick money from Gaddafi, and Gaddafi chasing them. So the African leaders, the idiots and the smarter ones, are all pretenders. They say one thing and do another. This particular conflict in Congo, where I agree with Ofono, the original grievance of President Kagame and people who are in leadership in Rwanda was not M23, was not the ethnic Rwandese who are in Congo. Was because you had people running away from a new order in Rwanda, running into Congo.
The ex-FAR.
We had a similar problem here. When you come with the arms to remove a government, you also have a duty to establish a relationship with those that you are chasing from power. We fought with Konye, fought with Khartoum. How many years? Do you want to blame colonialists for our conflict with Khartoum, and then Khartoum harboring Konye and us supporting Garang and his group? So we all have been doing the same thing. The problem mainly, I don't think Museveni would have supported South Sudan the way he did if he did not have a problem of people running from Uganda. They go to Sudan and they are harbored by Khartoum, including choosing and closing embassies. You're talking about banning Ugandan embassies here. There was a time Uganda went and arrested diplomats from the Sudan embassy here. So we all have done the same thing over. Sometimes you win and then you pretend to be smart. So the original grievance of Rwanda was that Congo, as Ofono has explained, Congo was harboring people it had chased from power. But you can also not collectively accuse everybody. So yes, you had some people who participated in
the genocide.
In genocide, but they are not the only ones who ran into Congo. So you went chasing after everybody, including those who are accusing of genocide, but they also, like today now, you've seen some people crossing borders, others go to Uganda, others go to Rwanda, others go to Kinshasa. So when you collectively accuse everybody, you are actually recruiting everybody against you.
So wouldn't a body like the EAC be the place where you resolve this, especially after you have admitted DR Congo into it? It
would if people believe in it. They don't. I have told you Tanzania doesn't believe in East Africa. Conveniently, because there are some benefits, you go and join. You think Tshisekedi came to join East Africa because he believed in it? I have been in Tanzania. They believe more in SADC than the East African community. At one time, actually, they were nearly walking away from the East African community. All these guys are just fortune hunters, pretending that they are leaders who are trying to force unity among African and East African people.
Thank you.
They are all fortune hunters. When Museveni goes to Congo to do roads, it is not because he wants to connect with Congo out of love. It is because first we are stealing gold from Congo, but also we do a lot of trade through Bunagana. We sell many items through that border.
Not strategic interest of nations?
Which is strategic interest?
We were joined by the Minister for ICT. the Honorable Dr. Chris Baryomunsi. You're welcome to the show. Honorable
Thank you very much, Alice, and good evening, panelists, and good evening, viewers. I was coming from Mulango.
Welcome. You've been on those PDM tours with the President.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Honorable Minister, two major incidents coming close to one another. An internal conflict in the Republic of Kenya and the targeting of Uganda House in Nairobi. It was burnt after a lot of money was spent renovating it. It was actually about to be handed over back to Uganda. About $7.2 billion or something that was spent
not
on
$1 billion.
No,
I think the first batch I think was $5 million. And then it went on. It cannot be more than 20.
About $7 million. A conflict in Goma Falls to rebel forces and Congolese in Kinshasa target the Ugandan embassy. What has gone wrong with our diplomacy?
Well, thank you very much. It speaks to the dynamics in the geopolitics. And both in Nairobi and Kinshasa, we are basically looking at the rioting or demonstrating citizens, especially young people who may have issues and can ban anything they come across. Because like Nairobi, we're basically not part of it. Their own internal problems, but probably they have some perceptions about Uganda because President Ruto is very close to President Yoweri Museveni. And in Nairobi, they were basically opposing some of the policies, especially the Budget Act introduced by President Ruto's government. So they saw President Ruto as a close ally of Uganda and President Museveni, and maybe that's why they chose to torch and damage the building. And then in Kinshasa, I think there is a perception that maybe Uganda supports M23, which is a very erroneous perception because we have no interest at all with what M23 is doing. Because like the panelists have explained, the contestation in DRC is basically the M23 who are the Tutsis, that the colonial demarcation of the boundaries of Rwanda and Congo put them in Congo. So they are Congolese citizens, but who are of the Tutsi ethnic extraction. The way we have these ethnic groups everywhere in Africa. So the leadership in Kinshasa thinks those are Rwandese who should go back. Then the leadership in Rwanda thinks that the Congolese government supports the Hutu militias who ran away from the genocide and are in Congo, in Eastern Congo. And we know that Eastern Congo has never been peaceful since 1960 when Congo became independent. Actually, some estimates put the rebel groups that are marauding all over Eastern Congo to about 120 groups, armed groups, including ADF, which we all know. So there has been that situation. Why? Partly because of the natural resources which are there, the minerals which are there. That's why you see mercenaries, that's why you see many groups getting there, and the war economy that thrives in Eastern Congo. So it's an old problem, but it's very unfortunate that it has taken this turn. And when you look at the narrative now, you get disappointed. Even the way the leaders are talking, they have lost decorum. You are a president, you call another one an idiot, you call another one a liar. Like last night there was a summit, the president of DRC did not show up. Then the President Kagame comes with the language which was a little bit lacking in decorum. The president of Burundi goes away from the summit because of that approach. I think more needs to be done. And of course there is also failure in communication. You get a situation where the Deputy Minister of Defense of South Africa comes to Goma and then in her public address is making reference to a telephone conversation between the two presidents of South Africa and Rwanda, and I think she made a comment which was understood that the president of South Africa had instructed the one of Rwanda. Now President Kagame says this is a lie. So the kind of language. So I think more needs to be done so that there is a harmony, there is calmness. But it's good that the presidents are talking. It's good that the leaders are talking. And
are they talking or quarreling?
No, they are talking. Yeah, the tensions might be high, but they are eventually coming down, and they continue to talk. And in the last night's summit, I think they agreed on two things. One, I think they appointed two amongst themselves to speak to the president of DRC and calm him down and persuade him to be part of this discussion, because you can't run away from an issue which is affecting your country. And also they tasked the chairman of the EAC summit, the president of Kenya, to contact the president of Zimbabwe, who is heading SADC, so they can have a joint summit of SADC and East African community. So there is work in progress, and we hope they should be able to listen to each other, because the challenge or the issue in Congo cannot be resolved through military confrontation. I don't think it will bring a solution, but rather they should look for political and diplomatic solutions to calm down the tension.
In about 30 seconds, Honorable Minister, are you concerned as government about Uganda's image, especially with these incidents in Kinshasa and Nairobi?
Yes, definitely we are concerned, because like I have said, by the time Congolese in Kinshasa go to ban an embassy, it means they have a feeling that we are letting down Congo, that maybe we are the ones behind empowering M23 to take over Goma and advance, whereas not. And like I have said, the government of Uganda is not part of that conflict.
I'm afraid
in 2007, after the controversial elections in Kenya, and our president went and was part of the inauguration of Kibaki. You remember that angry Kenyans, particularly in the Nyanza province, uprooted the railway line.
Coming to Uganda.
To Uganda. Because they thought falsely that by our president being there, we were supporting. Indeed, we needed support.
I'm afraid, gentlemen. Gentlemen.
But just to answer you.
Yes.
In building nations and building relations, you cannot say this will not happen. But when they happen, how would you handle? Unfortunately, we now have experience that many times, only recently, we had a strong disagreement with the Rwanda, as you know, for 2-3 years. They learned to close the border, but we have overcome that. Why? Yeah, we have overcome that because we are now able to trade and move.
We'll come back to that debate, and the bigger question many people are asking,